Eleanor Grace had never considered herself a fragile woman. Life had tested her more times than she could count the loss of her husband, raising her only son, Michael, alone, and keeping the house filled with warmth even when loneliness crept through walls, but she endured with quiet grace. Her son's happiness became her greatest victory. When Michael married Vanessa, Eleanor thought her prayers had been answered. Vanessa was charming, elegant, and confident, everything Eleanor had once hoped her son would find in a partner. In the early years, Vanessa had been affectionate, even calling her Mom. They baked together, shared secrets over tea, and planned family holidays. Eleanor adored her like a daughter. She helped them buy their first home, babysat their child, and offered advice when life got difficult. But slowly, things began to change. The warmth in Vanessa's smile cooled. Her visits became shorter, her tone sharper. Little comments began to sting, jokes about Eleanor's old-fashioned ways, her small-town manners, or the way she dressed. At first, Eleanor ignored them. She told herself it was stress, that all marriages faced rough seasons. But deep down, a knot of unease grew. Then, one Friday afternoon, the phone rang. "Mother." Vanessa's voice floated through the line, silky and sweet. "I'd love to take you out for lunch tomorrow. Just the two of us. You deserve a little treat." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "Oh, that's so thoughtful of you, dear. Where would you like to go?" "At L'Amour," Vanessa replied casually. Eleanor froze. L'Amour? The most exclusive restaurant in the city. The kind of place you saw in magazines, not real life. She had never been inside, though Michael had mentioned Vanessa's obsession with its lavish dinners. Eleanor smiled through the phone. "That sounds lovely. I'd be delighted." After hanging up, she stood quietly in her small kitchen, heart fluttering with cautious hope. Maybe Vanessa wanted to make amends. Maybe this lunch was a step toward repairing whatever had gone wrong between them. The next morning, she spent hours preparing. She pressed her blue silk dress, the one Michael said made her eyes shine. She styled her silver hair into soft curls and dabbed a touch of her late husband's favorite perfume behind her ears. Then, before leaving, she opened her jewelry box and pulled out a small velvet case. Inside lay a delicate gold bracelet, her mother's heirloom. It had survived generations, passed from mother to daughter as a symbol of love and faith. Eleanor held it gently, smiling at the thought. "Vanessa will appreciate this," she whispered, "a family piece for my daughter-in-law." With a hopeful heart, she tucked the bracelet into her purse and left for the restaurant. L'Amour stood tall and gleaming, its glass doors guarded by a doorman in white gloves. Inside, the chandeliers glittered like constellations, and soft piano music danced in the air. Eleanor took a deep breath before stepping in. She spotted Vanessa immediately, seated at a table near the center, her posture perfect, her red dress shimmering under the light. Two stylish women sat with her, laughing over glasses of champagne. When Vanessa saw Eleanor, her lips curled into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mother-in-law," she said sweetly as Eleanor approached, "you made it. How lovely." Eleanor smiled warmly. "I wouldn't miss it, dear." But as she sat down and noticed the smirk flicker on Vanessa's lips, a strange unease coiled in her chest. Something about this lunch didn't feel like an olive branch. It felt like a stage. And Eleanor, though she didn't yet know it, had just stepped into a performance that would wound her heart and awaken her strength. Eleanor tried her best to ignore the icy tone in Vanessa's voice. She took her seat at the grand marble table. The restaurant shimmered with gold and glass, every table filled with people dressed in luxury. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap, feeling slightly out of place among the glittering gowns and designer handbags. Vanessa's two friends, women Eleanor had never met, leaned in with amused smiles. "So this is your mother-in-law, Vanessa?" one of them asked, eyeing Eleanor with barely concealed disdain. "Yes," Vanessa replied sweetly. "She insisted on coming when I mentioned I was lunching here. She's so eager to see how the modern world dines. Eleanor's cheeks flushed. "Oh no, dear, you invited me," she began, but Vanessa's hand cut her off with a gentle pat. "Oh, Mother, don't be shy," Vanessa said with a smile that stung more than any insult. "We all know this place might be a bit upscale for you, but I thought it would be a fun experience." Her friends giggled. The waiter arrived, placing menus in front of them. The prices made Eleanor's breath hitch, dishes costing more than her monthly grocery budget. Still, she smiled and tried to blend in. "Everything looks wonderful," she said softly. Vanessa glanced up at the waiter. "She'll just have the garden salad and water." Eleanor blinked, surprised. "Oh, I can choose for myself, dear." Vanessa tilted her head, her voice honey, sweet but sharp. "Mother, I know you're on a budget. Let's not make a scene." Her words fell like knives. The table went silent for a moment, then her friends laughed quietly. Eleanor's heart sank. Around them, people had begun to glance over, curious about the tension. She tried to focus on the chandelier above, on the soft piano music, on anything but the tears burning in her eyes. Halfway through lunch, Eleanor gathered her courage and reached into her purse. "Vanessa," she said gently, "I brought something for you." She placed the velvet box on the table, smiling tenderly. "It belonged to my mother. I wanted you to have it as part of our family." Vanessa opened the box, and for a moment, surprise flickered across her face. The gold bracelet gleamed beautifully under the light, but then her expression hardened. "Oh, Eleanor," she said with a soft laugh. "That's sweet, but I don't really wear vintage pieces. They're not my style." Her friends leaned closer. "Is that real gold?" One whispered. "I'm not sure," Vanessa said lightly, pushing the box aside. "It's probably sentimental more than valuable." The laughter that followed seemed to echo through the entire restaurant. Eleanor's hands trembled. She could feel every eye on her, the pitiful looks, the whispers. Shame burned through her chest, but she forced herself to smile. "I see," she whispered. "Perhaps you're right." The waiter returned, and Vanessa ordered a bottle of champagne for the table, except she made no offer to include Eleanor. Instead, she raised her glass with her friends, toasting to class, confidence, and knowing your place. Eleanor sat in silence, her untouched salad cold before her. By the time the bill came, Vanessa made another cruel remark. "I suppose I'll cover this one. It's fine, Mother. I know you probably didn't bring enough." Eleanor looked up then, her eyes glistening not with tears, but with something deeper, calm, strength. "Thank you, dear," she said softly. "But remember what you give in arrogance, life takes back in kind." Vanessa only smirked. "We'll see about that." As Eleanor walked out of Leamore that afternoon, the world around her blurred through quiet tears. But somewhere beneath her pain, a fire began to spark. She had spent her life believing kindness was enough. Now she would learn that grace, when wielded with purpose, could be the sharpest form of revenge. The grand charity gala at Leamore glimmered with lights, laughter, and luxury, just as Vanessa had dreamed. Her designer gown sparkled like molten gold. Her diamond earrings swayed elegantly with every confident tilt of her head. She had spent weeks planning this evening, promoting herself as one of the city's most generous women. Photographers crowded near her, snapping pictures while she posed like a queen. For Vanessa, this wasn't about charity, it was about power. And tonight, she wanted everyone to see it. "Ladies and gentlemen," she cooed, raising her champagne glass, "thank you for attending my humble little event. It's such a joy to give back to those less fortunate." Laughter and applause followed. Cameras flashed again. Everything was perfect until the doors opened. A hush rippled across the room as Eleanor stepped inside. She wore a long silver gown, understated but stunning, her posture straight, her smile calm. Her presence seemed to quiet the noise, the same way a single note can silence an orchestra. Michael followed a few steps behind, his expression unreadable. Vanessa blinked, surprised. "Mother?" She began, forcing a smile. What a surprise. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it, dear," Eleanor replied warmly. "After all, this gala means quite a lot to me." Vanessa frowned, confused to you. Before she could speak again, the restaurant manager took the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Before we begin tonight's auction, I'd like to take a moment to thank the woman who made this entire event possible, the true benefactor of tonight's charity, Mrs. Eleanor." Grace applause thundered through the room. Vanessa's smile shattered. The cameras turned not toward her, but toward Eleanor. The manager continued, "Mrs. Grace personally covered every cost of this event, the meals, the decorations, and the entire donation fund. We're deeply honored to celebrate her generosity." Vanessa's glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the marble floor. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice calm but powerful. "Oh, don't be too surprised, dear," she said softly. "When you invited me to lunch that day, I realized something important. Class isn't bought with money. It's earned through how we treat others. You taught me that lesson well." Murmurs filled the room. Guests glanced between them, some whispering, others shaking their heads in quiet judgment. Vanessa's carefully built image began to crumble like glass underfoot. Michael approached his mother, his eyes heavy with guilt. "Mom, I didn't know." Eleanor smiled kindly. "Now you do, son, and knowing is enough." As she turned to leave, reporters swarmed her, asking for photos, quotes, and interviews. But Eleanor simply said, "True elegance doesn't need attention. It simply is." Outside, under the soft glow of city lights, Eleanor finally exhaled. The humiliation she'd endured in that same restaurant weeks ago no longer hurt. It had been transformed into strength, into grace sharpened by wisdom. Inside, Vanessa stood frozen amid the whispers, her golden image fading under the weight of her own arrogance. That night, the headlines told a story she would never live down. Eleanor Grace, the woman who redefined grace and generosity. And as Eleanor drove home, her heart light and steady, she whispered to herself with a small, knowing smile, "Revenge doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it arrives with applause."